Everybody was shocked. They had never seen this before. They looked up and they saw this guy running. And they had never seen that before, because this was a guy that didn't have to run. He had people who would run for him. He had people that would do whatever he said because he was in charge. He was wealthy. He had power. But something was missing. So he had to run. And it blew everybody's mind. Let the story come alive, because it really happened. We see it in 3 separate accounts in the Gospels. You know the story is the rich young ruler. But many times we read right over that and miss that he ran to Jesus. Let me explain to you the significance of that. Because up to this point in Scripture, there have been a lot of miracles taking place. So everybody in that region was hearing the story of Jesus. They knew about Jesus. And they knew that he was healing the sick. They also knew that he was teaching a message unlike anything they had ever heard before. And this guy had to run to him because he knew that something wasn't right inside. If you have your Bibles, Mark chapter 10. Mark chapter 10. We're going to start at verse 17. Y'all, this is so good. This is so good. This is the picture of me and you. And some of you are saying like, Seth, you don't know my bank account. I'm not really rich. I'm not a ruler over anything. But let me position it differently. You have things in your life that you value greatly over everything else. You find your joy in some things. You find your sense of confidence in some stuff. You're a good person, doing good things. As Olaf would say, all good things, all good things. Okay, doing good. Not an evil person, horrible doing, you're good, but you're holding on to some stuff. Everybody here. So don't read this and go and think this is about finances. This is about what you hold as valuable in place of God. As he was leaving on his journey, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked, "Good teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" That is, eternal salvation in the Messiah's kingdom. And Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments: do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not testify falsely, do not defraud, honor your father and mother." And the man replied to him, "Teacher, I have carefully kept all these commandments since my youth. All right, y'all pick up on that? I've dotted every I. I've crossed every T. Doesn't say it here, but he's like, but something's still not right. I've done all that. I don't know if he's out of breath here. I don't know how far he ran. By the way, can I just paint a picture? A man of his caliber in this setting wore this big tunic. And the only way for him to run was for him to reach down and gather it on both sides. And so when he was running, he looked stupid. I mean, you just picture that. Some of y'all are runners, okay? You know, can you imagine what it would look like to put on like a choir robe, maybe 2 or 3 of them, and try to go run a sprint, okay? You try to gather it up so you could get to wherever you're going a little bit quicker. That was his case here. So, desperation. I love this part right here. He said, teacher, I've kept all these things since my youth. Looking at him, Jesus felt a love and compassion for him and said, you lack one thing. Go and sell all your property and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. But the man was saddened at Jesus' words, and he left grieving because he owned much property and had many possessions, which he treasured more than his relationship with God. Don't misread this passage that says salvation is earned by doing good. Salvation is experienced in total surrender. That's what this is. And when you surrender completely everything, there's a joy that you can't describe. And it will radically change your life. I want you to listen to a story that's real. Lydia, come on up here for just a second. I love Lydia Blackstone and her family. And she has come to Kentucky many times, but this year's different. And I want you to know why.
Well, hey, I'm a little bit shorter than Seth. There we go. Well, hey, everyone. I'm Lydia. I know most of y'all in the crowd, but if you don't know me, I've been going to First Baptist pretty much my whole life and have been on Kentucky. This is my 5th year. I'm here as a college student this year. And like Seth said, this is a very different year because God has done a really beautiful work in my heart recently that I'm really excited to share to y'all. But basically, I go to University of South Carolina, but still go Tigers. I go to USC, and, I headed off to USC, excited, ready to get into friendships and just to have a really great time. I was really excited. And my first semester, I really made it a lot about me. I made it so much about fitting into the right group, being popular, being important, all of that. And, I lived college life to the fullest, to say the least. But it left me utterly and completely broken. So, I was at a state of being completely broken when I got this crazy opportunity to go to Israel with First Baptist. It was a really special trip that I got to go on with my sisters and my mom. But when in Israel, every day was the best day ever, as Max Gillespie, who was on the trip with me, would say. But I was just having the best time ever. My life was broken, very, very broken. When I went up to my favorite spot in Israel, everyone was like, "What was your favorite part of the trip? Was it riding a camel or was it the Dead Sea?" Even though those were so fun, it was so busy. The streets were busy. The groups were moving. It was like Saliba, our tour guide, was like from here to here, just taking us from place to place. And it was so busy, we didn't really get the chance to sit and be still and just say, Jesus was right here. And the one place that we got to do that was the Mount of Beatitudes, which I think Britt's going to put a picture up of it. But that's what I saw. And I was sitting up there, a broken college student who had made a lot of really bad choices, sad and broken, knowing that Jesus loved me, knowing that I was saved. I was saved at 14, but not living for him at all. When I heard these words, that I actually have memorized the Mount of Beatitudes because this week at Backyard Bible Club, the Sebeskis are my group parents. And we have Deandra this week, which is such a blessing. But Miss Sebeski, I like to call her DIV, Debbie International Version, because she can quote the Bible. And I coined that term, may I say. So if you hear it again, it came from me, just saying. But she prays this prayer over our group, and, it's utter blessing, such joy. It's Debbie. And she hands me the Mount of Beatitudes sermon after I told her that I really loved it. That was a really impactful moment in my journey. And she said, memorize it. And I was like, oh, Debbie, not going to happen. But I did. And so I want y'all to picture being there right now, just as the disciples were, as I say these words. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside, that very mountainside, and sat down. His disciples came near to him, and he began to teach them. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are those pure of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs will be the kingdom of God. Blessed are you when they insult you, persecute you, or say all kinds of evil against you because of my name. Rejoice and be glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For just as they persecuted you, they persecuted the prophets that went before you. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is of no use except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do you light a lamp and put it underneath a bowl. Instead, you place it on a stand. In the same way, let your light shine before others that they may see your good acts and glorify your Father in heaven. As I heard those words and saw that, the Lord pierced my heart. And some people, like Sam and everybody that was up there with me, that was a special moment, and I think y'all remember it. I think of the Gillespies that were next to me and my sisters that were with me as those words were said. A lot of us, just tears went down our face. And those words, I thought, I am literally standing on the truth. I'm standing on it where it was preached by Jesus, and I don't live it at all. How can I act this way and hear these words in my life not be changed? So I want to take apart what was said to me that day. The beginning are all these blessings. I said, God, why is my life not being blessed? Well, maybe because I wasn't doing any of those attitudes. I was not reflecting the Lord at all in the way that I lived my life down at USC at all. So if I want to be blessed, how do I do that? I live obediently. God is saying live obediently. What does that look like? What does obedience look like? Obedience means living the way that Jesus did, with the joy that he had, with the excitement to tell others, with the kindness. And you know what? I wanted to be blessed. I wanted my life to be blessed so bad, but I wasn't willing to give it up like the rich young ruler. He was saying, here's how you get blessed. Here's how you do it. Here's how your life changes. But I was holding on to it so tight because I wanted to be popular and I wanted to be fun and I wanted to do well in college. And seniors sitting out here, there's a pressure on y'all to do well in college, to get a great friend group, to get those pretty Instagrams, to join the right sorority, to join the right fraternity, to do all of that. That is such a stressor on seniors going in. Let me tell you, it's not worth it. It's not. What's worth it is living your life obediently till you get blessed and you experience the joy of the Lord. And that's what's happened in my life. So let me tell you about the blessings. So basically, if you don't know me, I want to be a news reporter. That's my dream. First semester, I didn't get involved in our news program, SGTV News 4. But I didn't get involved in it because I was too busy doing other things. And so I got home after the Israel trip. And I'm just going to shoot straight with y'all because y'all need to just hear it like it is. I was sitting around the kitchen table with my sisters and my mom, and Virginia was she's just talking about the Lord. And we were debriefing the trip a little bit. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I just started pouring out crying. And I reached in the back of my phone case and took out that fake ID and snapped it and threw it on the floor. And I'm sorry, but that was my key card into the world of USC. If I couldn't go out, then I would have no friends. I would have nothing to do, and I would be weird. That's what I thought. And snapping that was snapping my key card into that world and saying, God, I want your best. I'm done with that. And so that night, the next morning, I got a text from a guy that I had met. He was like my orientation leader or something that was a part of SGTV. He knew that I wanted to be a reporter. But after I snapped that ID, the next morning, I was like, oh my goodness. I wasn't regretting what I'd done, but I was like, I can't even go now. You know, like I'm not going to drink, but I can't even go now. How am I going to have a social life? I'm going to be so bored. I'm going to be so bored. Boy, was I wrong, because I was not bored second semester. I got a text from the head guy of SGTV the next morning saying, hey, do you want to come out and try to be a reporter? And I was like, oh my goodness, I have something to do, and this is my dream. So basically, I went back and did the little tryout. They took me in the room, the green screens and all of that, and I'm just in heaven. I'm in Lydia heaven. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And so they roll the teleprompter, and I'm trying out. I'm in my pencil skirt and heels. I'm ready. And I did really well. I'm not going to lie. And I got a reporter role, but I also got an anchoring role. It was really exciting. It was pretty awesome. But then I never had any time to do anything else but go out and report. And what a better way to share Jesus is when you're with different people every day, hopping out of a car, just like we are in Kentucky, hopping out of a car saying, hey, I'm Lydia Blackstone, and then they ask you questions about you, they think you're important when you wear that, even though you're a freshman broadcast major, and then you get to share Jesus with them. But the Lord started blessing that. He started opening doors in crazy ways. I'm standing in Russell House, which is where we eat our food. USC people know. On a Friday night at 9:00, and everyone else is doing other things, but I'm standing there and I'm setting up my tripod and I'm putting my camera on it. I'm ready to roll, and in walks this big crew, and I'm thinking it's a local station. And I'm like, it's network time. It's time for me to network and get in with WIS in Columbia. So I turned to them. I'm like, hey y'all, how are y'all doing? And I was like, look at y'all doing the same thing I'm doing. And they were like, oh, hey, are you a student? I was like, yes, thinking that it was a flex that I worked for SGTV News 4 as a reporter and anchor. And so I asked them, I was like, who do y'all work for? And they're like, we work for CBS in New York City. CBS in New York City, you may say? I run over there. I get my business cards out with my name misspelled on them, and I hand it to, and I proofread it. Still got printed Blackstone. But I'm talking to this guy, telling him my hopes and dreams. And I was like, what are y'all doing in South Carolina? Better yet, the University of South Carolina. And they're like, oh, the Democratic debate is down in Charleston on Tuesday. And we're just getting interviews from students and such, and seeing their opinion on it. And I'm like, Lord, this is awesome. And so basically they were like, I was like, I cannot wait to be a reporter of that caliber and get to go to something like that and report on that. And they said, well, you're a reporter now, aren't you? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm not really a good one, but I do have a camera. And so basically he was like, I can get you there, but only if you're the reporter that gets to go. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so I go back to my dorm that night. He's like, email me tomorrow. And I was like, Lord, it's your will. Like, I have to go. You have to get me there. And so I prayed a lot that night. I ended up going to the debate. But the better part of that story is not that I got to go to the debate and interview some presidential candidate, even though it's pretty cool, that God opened that door. But the better story is people ask me, how did you get that? You're not going out with us anymore, and all you do is report and talk about Jesus now. Like, how did that door open for you? Only you that would happen to. And, that's when I got to share. It's because when you're obedient to the Lord, it doesn't always look like that. It doesn't have to always look in like some crazy blessing, but sometimes it does. And in my case, it did. The day before the debate, I'm so hyped up on it. I decide to cook myself a nice cuisine in my dorm room, and I burnt the chicken really, really bad. And the flames are going up, and my room's smoking, and I've almost burnt down South Quad. And so I open my door, and me and my roommate are like trying to get all the smoke out of the room. And this girl walks by. She was on my hall. She was with her little sister that was staying with her. And they were like, what did you do? And I was like, well, I'm a terrible cook. And so they come inside, and they realize that my room is just laid out different. And they're like, can we get a tour? And I was like, of course, my pride and joy. Come see. And so I'm taking them on a tour around my room. And a few days before, I had put up a Bible verse on the wall that I had really loved that week. And the girl looks at it, and she says, the younger sister, her name's Caroline, looks at it and says, I love that. And my eyes, I'm sorry, there's not a lot of believers at University of South Carolina. So when you hear somebody say that they love a Bible verse, you hop on it and you get excited. And I'm like, oh, I love Jesus. That's just what I said. Because being a baby Christian and sharing their faith besides the week in Kentucky, I wasn't really prepared. And so then she started asking me questions, and I told her the story of the debate. I told her the story of obedience and blessing coinciding. And I got to talk to her about the Lord for like an hour with her sister in there. So church was the next morning. I was like, do y'all want to go to church with me? I go to Shannon Baptist, which is a great church in Columbia if you do end up going to USC. But I take them there the next morning. And they had only gone to a Catholic church maybe once in their life. Oh, backtracking the story. The girl, I showed her my Bible that night, and she's flipping through it, and she said I never had one. She'd never had a Bible. And it wasn't a kid in Kentucky that was barefoot coming out of a trailer. It was a normal girl that had never seen a Bible and never read a Bible. And so I was like, take it. It was a nice She Reads Truth Bible, but, we had to let it go. She takes the Bible, and I'm like, come to church, because I was taking my roommate every week. So they come along with me, and she hears, when you're sitting with your friend that's not a Christian in church, and they just preach the perfect sermon, and you're like, yes! She actually gave her heart to Jesus, which was awesome. And that's such a blessing. Oh my goodness. She texted me, weeks later. I had written a verse in my Bible that said, you're sealed for eternity. When you accept Christ, you're sealed for eternity. And I wrote a date out on the side, which is April 6th, which is the day that I let Jesus into my heart, when I was 14. She texted me on that day saying, happy anniversary as a Christian, She's like, my anniversary is this day. Thank you for sharing with me. Y'all, it's not about just sharing with these children. It's about sharing every single day. And it's a joy. It's so much fun. It is such such a joy. And the thing is, when I started praying every day after that day, I prayed, Lord, send me somebody every day to just tell about you, because I feel most alive as a Christian when I'm doing my purpose, which is to tell others. And it's not just in Kentucky, it's at home, because, whether it be a trailer park or a country club, they're just as lost. And Lord, use me in that. We hear all these God stories throughout the week of how he has done amazing things in our van and done amazing things. Those stories are available every day, If you're obedient to the Lord, he blesses you. So that's breaking down. Sorry, Seth, I'm talking a lot. So just stop me if preaching. Okay. Anyways, the second part of the Beatitudes is, you are the salt of the earth. It sounds a little bit harsh when you say you're the salt of the earth. If it loses its saltiness, you're thrown underfoot and trampled. I was like, what does that mean? God, that's mean. But when you take that apart, I was like, well, why does it say salt? Why are we the salt of the earth? What does salt do? Salt makes you thirsty. And that really was convicting when I heard that on the Mount of Beatitudes. Am I making anybody thirsty for the things of the Lord by the way I'm living my life? Do they want to know? Do they want to know why I have this smile on my face and this joy? Or am I just like everybody else? And I was just like everybody else, and I wasn't making anyone thirsty for the things of the gospel. That's a convicting thing to hear. But thrown out and trampled under man's foot. It doesn't say trample under God's foot. It says trampled under man's foot. And if I would describe the way that my freshman year, first semester went, is that I was trampled under man's foot. It wasn't God allowing that things happening to me. It was me breaking my own heart. We break our own hearts sometimes, y'all, by not being obedient to the Lord. He says he came here to give us life and to give it in abundance. I want to tell y'all, as not an oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm 19 and I figured this out. I should have figured this out when I was 14, when I first received Christ. Don't wait. Don't hold on to that, because the joy is released. The joy is saying, Lord, take my life, take my story and bless it so that I can tell others. Oh my goodness, not just in Kentucky, everywhere. I've been praying the prayer, Lord, send me somebody every day, and he's been faithful in that. Sometimes it's awkward. It's an awkward conversation where I'm like, talking about Jesus, and but no word returns void. It's a seed planted. And then sometimes I have stories where they give their life to Christ, and it changes my view of how we should share. But the last part of the Mount of Beatitudes is you are the light of the world, which I just love. Because there's so many believers, and you see their joy and you see the light in their face. I think of Sal Barone when I think of that. He's about the happiest little man ever because he has the joy of the Lord, y'all. It's in his face. It's evident. There's so many people like that. Have that light in you, and know where it comes from, so that when people ask, you can tell them. Always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have. Be prepared in Kentucky. Be prepared at home. But then it says, neither do you put it under a bowl. Instead, you place it on a stand so it gives light to everybody in the room. How many times have I put my light under a bowl for the approval of people? Because my light shone in their darkness, and I was like, this is too much. I don't want to be a weird Christian. I don't want to be a weird Christian. Like, I'm cool. Like, I'm cool. Like, I'm not a weird Christian. Don't make me one of the ones that wears the skirts. Like, that's what I thought, No. But I'm sorry. That was too far. But that's what I was like, God, like, don't, like, just make me, I'm sorry. That was too far. I apologize. I'm sorry, Mom. But I was so scared of being weird. I was so scared of standing out. Why are we scared to stand out? Because if people ask us, then we get to tell them. And that's the best part, is telling. I love telling people about Jesus. That's my favorite thing to do, because it's my purpose. It's my purpose. It's all of our purpose. It's like using a hammer to unscrew something. It doesn't work, but when you use it to hammer a nail in the wall to hang a beautiful painting, it works because it's its purpose, you know? Don't put your light under a bowl. Place it on a stand and be proud of it. Because that's when not only don't just do it to receive blessing. Sometimes we're like, well, Lord, bless me. I'm living for you. Because we want blessing. Live obediently, because sometimes the best blessing is having close fellowship with the Lord. That's what I realized in the beginning before crazy debate stories happened to me. And, you know, I felt lonely in the Christian life. I was going home to an empty dorm on Thursday and Friday nights and saying, hey, I'm going to read my Lisa Turkhurst book. And it, you know, and it felt lonely for a while, but then I realized the reason, just like when I was sitting on that mountain and I was still with Christ, when I was still just sitting there with the Lord, that's when he does his work. In quarantine, the time that we were sitting in our house, I have been praying that it has been the stillness that so many believers need. So many believers need to have that close fellowship with the Lord. Because sometimes I think it's been easy. It's easy to live for the Lord when you're in Kentucky. It's so easy. You know, everyone's around you's all hyped up on Jesus. I was a convenient Christian. It was convenient to live for the Lord in the summers. You know, when you're going to Voyager, when you're going to Mirror Image, when you're going to Kentucky, it's so convenient. You know, it's like convenient to be on fire for the Lord. But when the Lord does his blessing and his work is when it's not convenient. It's not convenient to be a Christian in college, let me tell you. But it is the best thing because there's a joy in it. And when you put that light on a stand, it gives light to others all in the room so that they may see your good works, see the good things you do, and glorify your Father in heaven. That's why we're here. It's not us. It's not about us. And I've made it about me for 18 years, and it's done. I have held on to that thing. I've held on to, for me, it was the party lifestyle. It's different for everybody. But I've held on and just had one foot in it still so that I could still be important in the world's eyes. I've held on to that. But stepping out of it and saying, you know what, I'm going to walk completely obedient in you. Y'all, I just can't describe. Just do it. Just do it. Just release that thing. Please, you will see the joy. And like, y'all, the joy that I have, it's not happiness because there's a lot of circumstances in my life that aren't necessarily happy. But the joy, oh my goodness, that can just light up your face like Sal Barone. You know? Anyways, that's my call to you is to, you know, don't be like the rich young ruler, because I was the rich young ruler for a really long time where I said, you know what, Lord? I don't trust that you're good enough. I don't trust that you're enough for me. I need some of the world. I need some of their approval. Yours is not enough for me. And I turned and walked away like that rich young ruler. Do not turn and walk away. Make it tonight. Make it tonight that you choose to release that thing and live and walk in the fullness and joy. Because I'll tell you, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. That day, when I saw that, and I was sitting up there with the Davises and a bunch of other First Baptist people that were just, look at this picture, you know. Little did they know in my heart that the Lord had pierced it and changed my life, very much so. So that's my story, and I'm glad I got to share it with y'all. Thank you, Seth, because I want to be a help. I'm 19, and I just now feel like I got it somewhat right, and I'm still working on it. Don't wait till you're my age, please. Just walk in the fullness of his joy and trust that it's enough, because it is. All these pieces broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole. Empty-handed, but not forsaken, I've been set free. been set free. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes. Laying yourself down, then raising up the broken to life. You take our failures, you take our weakness, you set your treasures in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel, open to receive your light in me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes. Laying yourself down, then raising up the broken to life. One of my favorite pastors used to end some of his sermons like that. And I wanted to honor first my Father in heaven, but also my grandfather who's with him. I'm not as good as he is, and I don't have the best voice in the world. But it's true what I sang. Make it true for you. That's just what.
Praise God. Hallelujah.